What if I told you that most retirement spending strategies are too conservative? That most retirees actually spend less than they can and their expenses actually go down over time? Or that following the 4% rule results in having almost two times more than your starting principal in two-thirds of historical scenarios? As the owner of a wealth management practice, a certified financial planner, and a finance lecturer at a Big Ten university, I spend hundreds of hours annually helping retirees overcome the issues I'll present to you today. Oh, please like and subscribe if you found this helpful. A surprising fact from a study in the Journal of Financial Planning: not only do most retirees not spend their entire income in retirement, it becomes more true the wealthier you are. Even more surprising, the study found that even in years of terrible investment returns, like 2000 and 2008, where you had two large market crashes on either side, and one would expect that overall wealth would decline, the wealth of wealthy retirees actually increased during that time. The researchers conclude that there's a gap in what most retirees can spend and what they actually spend. Now, some of you watching may say that, well, that's simply because people were battening down the hatches in those tough times, and that's why they weren't spending as much. And that might be the case, but I find in my experience that it's actually two different issues: mindset and lack of planning. And the research that I cited earlier backs me up. First, mindset. It's hard to transition from saving to spending. If you've accumulated wealth, it's either because you struck gold with some sort of business, inherited wealth, or most likely, and like 80% of millionaires in the US, you are self made. To get there, you exercise discipline to spend less than you made for somewhere between 30 to 50 years. When you get to retirement, it can be hard to transition from a saving mindset, which is how you got here, to a spending mindset. This is also because you understand that you can't spend wildly because you don't have infinite money. So you get into this paradox: saving is good, but not spending enough could also be bad. I've seen this firsthand with a client couple of mine. Both are very, very frugal. They needed a new vehicle and were going to go down the same path that they did before, which was a smaller used vehicle because of the affordability. But it hit them one day. The husband does a lot of projects, often borrows a larger vehicle from a friend. Could they afford to get just a large vehicle this time? After running the numbers, they could afford it, but it was initially strange to be looking at vehicles in that price range, a little bit of sticker shock. But they thankfully got over that after thinking through the situation and their own plan. And they saw then, after feeling comfortable with it, the benefits it could provide to them. Which leads us to our second reason why wealthy retirees don't spend enough: they haven't planned. Unlike my client who does have a plan, the study mentioned before says that very few people have even thought about decumulating assets in retirement. And if they have thought about it, only 40% have developed a formalized plan to do so. Without a plan, you likely won't have confidence in your money lasting, so you inevitably spend conservatively, maybe too conservatively, throughout retirement. And these conservative spending habits don't come without negative consequences. Think about the memories you can make with family by paying for an Airbnb deep in the woods. Go hiking, do whatever you want to do. Or maybe plane tickets to go visit your grandkids across the country. Talking numbers is one thing, but the application of those numbers impact real people and real lives. So, how do you make a plan that instills both confidence and adequate spending? Well, if you're watching this, you've probably heard of the most impactful retirement study out there, the 4% rule. The quick summary of this study is that researchers found, if you look back historically, that a retiree could have withdrawn up to 4% of their properly diversified stock and bond portfolio every year, adjusting for inflation, and never have run out of money over a 30-year retirement. There's only one problem with this rule: it may be too conservative. Why is that the case? Well, the 4% rule works in the worst of circumstances, but using just average returns gives you a 6% withdrawal rate. But it gets way crazier. Going back to the 1870s, if you utilized a 4% rule for your 30-year retirement in a 60-40 portfolio, you would have ended up with double your starting principal in two-thirds of time periods. And you had a better chance of 5xing your money than ending below your starting principal. Said another way, this means that you had a better chance of starting with a $1 million portfolio and ending with $5 million than you did ending below that starting principal of $1 million. This means that the 4% rule may be too conservative and that you can actually get some further and better enjoyment out of retirement by implementing a different withdrawal strategy. So what might those alternatives be? Well, I do think that there is merit in utilizing the 4% rule early on in retirement so as to avoid the dangers of large withdrawals in down markets early in your retirement years. This is something called sequence of return risk, of which I have a video on that. A link to that is somewhere on the screen, probably up in the corner somewhere. But some full strategy strategy alternatives, I'll talk about these. There's one called ratcheting and one called guardrails. The easier of those two strategies is the ratcheting strategy. This is where you initially start at a 4% withdrawal rate, adjust it by inflation, but then you also increase your withdrawals by 10% once your account balance grows by 50%. And you do this every 3 years at most. Here's an example of that on the screen. As you can see, the amount that you withdraw can vary wildly depending on various market conditions, but you at least always have that minimum 4%. The second and more challenging strategy to implement is called guardrails, developed by Guyton and Klinger. This is where you receive pay increases when the market does well, but you cut back spending when the markets do very poorly. The benefits of the strategy, though, is that you can start out at a higher initial withdrawal rate if needed, which is over 5%. But you are still protected over the course of retirement if you're willing to make small spending adjustments along the way. The strategy, I think, is fun to learn, and it can provide retirees with more income than they expect, but it is challenging to implement. We utilize a software called Income Labs, which helps put this into practice, where we can take someone's situation and look back through other historical scenarios to see how their portfolio would have done. But we pay the big bucks for that, and so we use it with our clients. I don't think there's a client or like a retail version for you that are watching this, but there is a less powerful but free version I have found that's called FI Calc. I'll have a link to the description below. I don't get any commissions or anything from this. No, not affiliated. I think it's just a good resource. If you go to the left-hand side of the screen, when you click on it, there's a strategy called Guyton Klinger. You'll be able to set some different parameters and see how those parameters did historically. Protecting your wealth is very important, but without a plan, you have a much higher probability of either running out of money or not spending enough money to enjoy that retirement. If you or a loved one wishes to make a plan for decumulating your assets, feel free to reach out to our firm by clicking the Are We a Good Fit in the link below. No commissions. We align our incentives with you, and we will be the people who care about your money more than anyone who doesn't share your last name. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe so others may see the video. Godspeed and happy planning.